وتسمى هذه المدينة اللي هي مكة بأم القرى في القرآن. أم القرى هي الاسم هذا المفروض يطلق على مدينة مبهرة، مدينة فيها آثار، مدينة فيها لها أسوار، مدينة يعني كبيرة معروفة.
The Prophet Muhammad would go forth for his affairs and journey far afield until he reached the glens of Mecca and the beds of its valleys. Aisha, Muhammad's wife, mentioned how one of the men was longing for Mecca. Would that I but stay overnight in a valley filled with various kinds of grass? When we came to Mecca, we saw a town blessed with water and trees, and delighted with it, we settled there. Al-Bukhari speaks of a prisoner who was eating grapes while he was chained in irons, and he says, "This was not the time of fruit in Mecca."
It's hard to believe that these things were written about Mecca. The area around Mecca is all rocks and desert. Mecca averages less than 10 centimeters of rain per year. With its extremely hot temperatures and barren conditions, this is scarcely enough to grow any vegetation at all, let alone grow enough food to support a large population. Yet the holy city of Islam is described as having fields with trees and grass and soil, but there's no cultivatable land near Mecca. It doesn't match the ancient descriptions. Ibn Ishaq mentions that the people of Mecca were reluctant to cut down trees in the sacred area. The presence of trees and plants in ancient times can be easily tested by the presence of spores and pollen in undisturbed ancient soil. To date, there is no record of trees having ever existed in ancient Mecca.
Another puzzle is that the city of Mecca is missing on all early maps of Arabia. One would expect that a major merchant city would be mentioned on early maps, but not one shows Mecca before the time of Islam.
Over the years, I have gathered copies of many ancient maps of Arabia. I have diligently translated them, but never once did I find Mecca mentioned on a map before Islam. Did you know that the name Mecca does not appear in any literature prior to 740 AD? That's 120 years after the founding of Islam. Don't you find it puzzling that for the first 120 years of Islamic history, none of the surrounding nations knew anything about the existence of Mecca?
How could a major city, a city that could raise thousands of men in its army, a city that had agriculture, trees, grass, fruit and grapes, be missed by other nations? How could a major city with walls, temples, and public buildings not be found in the annals of other nations, especially if it was a merchant city that undertook trade with all the nations around it? And most puzzling of all is that when we go to the physical location of this ancient city, we find that there is no early archaeological record. It was an insignificant location, not even on a trade route. Many historians today have come to the conclusion that the accounts of the founding of Islam are all myths. Obviously, there is a great discrepancy between what Islamic records tell us and what the archaeologists have been finding, so the conclusion they draw is that the Islamic records are just fabricated myths.
In my years of study, I have become convinced that the early records are not myths, but that they refer to another location that fits all of these descriptions. I believe that Muhammad was born and raised in another place, and that Muslims are facing the wrong direction when they pray. According to commonly accepted Islamic history, the Kaaba was a major shrine in the city of Mecca and the focus of pilgrimage in Arabia. A good starting place might be studying the pilgrimage before the founding of Islam.
وكما دون المؤرخ الطبري بأن هناك كان نوعان من الحج، الحج والعمرة، الحج الأكبر أو الحج الأصغر، وكان جد محمد كان يؤدي العمرة قبل الإسلام.
This Umrah before Muhammad was at a time when the focal point of Arabian pilgrimage was to a place known as the Forbidden Gathering Place. This location held many pagan idols.
وهذه الأسماء كانت موجودة قبل الإسلام، ولكن ما زال المسلمين إلى حد هذا الآن يستخدمون نفس الأسماء، ولكن هي الأسماء هذه إيتنا من الخارج، يعني من الوثنية، ليس أسماء إسلامية.
In order for us to understand what was happening in pre-Islamic Arabia, we need to understand the importance of holy places in ancient Arabia. From ancient times, Middle Eastern religions have equated gods with regions rather than being universal. Modern readers of history have long been influenced by Greek and Roman concepts of the pantheon of gods and have failed to realize the significance that the ancient Arabs applied to gods of specific regions. In the eyes of the ancient Arabs, there were gods who lived in Mesopotamia, gods who lived in Egypt, and gods who lived in Greece, and so on. Arab merchants passing through an area would respect the local gods. They were not opposed to gods of different places. What they were opposed to was the representation of a god in human or animal form. They preferred to use geometric shapes. For instance, here is a god in the shape of a block. That one over there is shaped as a triangle. Each of these gods were considered local gods and must be respected when passing through their territory.
Such a view of religion naturally leads to accepting territories and locations as being sacred to specific gods. Thus, the area around a temple, such as a particular valley or remote desert location, could be considered as sacred. It would have a precinct where people could gather, even with their enemies, and be safe, because violence was forbidden in the sacred precincts.
When tourists enter the majestic beauty of Wadi Rum here in southern Jordan, they're so often taken up with the exquisite beauty of this valley and the rugged mountains that they miss a temple dedicated to the goddess Lat, or Alat as some call her. This Nabatean temple had a sacred area. It was located in front of the temple, with the mountains marking off the sacred area.
Before Islam, Arabs were divided into many groups. They worshipped different gods and often fought amongst themselves over tribal issues. The one thing that held them together was the pilgrimage to a common ancient meeting place. The Quran calls this Masjid al-Haram, or the forbidden gathering place. Masjid means gathering and is translated mosque today. Before Islam, there were no mosques, so the masjid was simply a gathering place. The forbidden gathering place was a sacred place of refuge and security, where regular activities ceased and violence was forbidden, or haram. The concept of haram, or forbidden, is very strong in Islam.
في القرآن ذكر المسجد الحرام، وهو المسجد الحرام في المدينة الإسلامية المقدسة، ويعتبر المسجد الحرام وما حواليه من المدن هو منطقة محرمة.
Allah has made Mecca a sacred sanctuary, and it was a sanctuary before and will be so after. None is allowed to uproot its shrubs or cut its trees or hunt its game.
So we have two descriptions of the original holy city of Islam. It was a haram place where killing was forbidden, and it was the focus of the pilgrimage for many centuries before the founding of Islam. Now look here, much of the graffiti found throughout the Negev and southern Jordan was written by people on pilgrimage to the ancient city of Petra in southern Jordan. Thousands of people scratched their names and messages on rocks as they made their way to Petra for pilgrimage. This creates a problem for us. Mecca is unknown in maps and literature before and during the rise of Islam. The descriptions, such as the center of the trade route, the mother of all cities, and the focal point of the ancient pilgrimage, do not fit. How can we solve this? The answer to that comes from Islam itself.
المساجد في الوقت الحاضر تتجه كلها صوب القبلة، صوب الكعبة، وهناك مكان في المسجد يسمى المحراب الذي الإمام يوقف فيه ويصلي ويقود المصلين. ولكن في الأيام الماضية ما كان موجود هذا المحراب، ولكن كان في حائط يتجه صوب القبلة، وكان المبنى بالكامل مبني باتجاه صوب القبلة.
In Islam, it is universally understood that the Qibla is towards Mecca and Saudi Arabia. No one questions the direction of the Qibla today. However, the Quran tells Muslims they have a Qibla. The text of the Quran does not give the name of the city to which prayer was originally made. It only mentions Masjid al-Haram, or the forbidden gathering place. Muslims believe they originally prayed towards Jerusalem. According to Islamic sources, in 624 AD, Muhammad changed the Qibla to Mecca. Muhammad revealed this in Surah 2 of the Quran.
Thus we appointed the Qibla to you. Indeed, it was a momentous change, except to those guided by Allah. Allah would never make your faith of no effect. Now, shall we turn you to a Qibla that shall please you? Turn then your face in the direction of the Masjid al-Haram. Wherever you are, turn your faces in that direction.
As a historian of the Arabian Peninsula, I've always been interested in finding the location of the original Qibla. What direction did Muhammad pray towards before the Qibla was changed? Was it Jerusalem, as some claim? Was it Syria, as some claim? Or was it some other direction?